Official Galactic Intelligence Report, Species Classification Revision. Listen, I've been a bureaucrat in the Interstellar Classification Bureau for 237 standard cycles, and I've processed more xenobiological reports than most sentient beings have neurons. But humans are the bureaucratic equivalent of a quantum uncertainty principle wrapped in administrative chaos. When the preliminary report first crossed my desk, I assumed it was another clerical error. Humans, classified simultaneously as unarmed civilian population and apex predatory organism in the same database entry. Impossible, right? Wrong. Most species have clear-cut categories. Zorblaxians are traders. Kryn colonies are mathematicians. Humans. They're the galactic wildcard that makes taxonomists drink industrial-grade sedatives. Our initial investigation began after a routine threat assessment triggered every single red flag in our system. Not because humans were militarizing or developing super weapons. No, they triggered an absolute diplomatic freakout by existing. Investigator Krell, a methodical Quantan with 3 doctorates and 0 sense of humor, was assigned to determine exactly what made humans so uniquely classified. His initial report summary read like a fever dream. Species appears capable of converting standard office supplies into potential extinction-level combat implements. Recommend extreme caution. I'll spare you the bureaucratic details, but imagine an intelligent species where a middle management accountant could potentially neutralize a small invasion force using nothing more than a stapler, held caffeine addiction, and an inexplicable capacity for improvised tactical thinking. Our mission was simple. Understand how a species could simultaneously be considered both completely vulnerable and utterly dangerous. Classify them. Categorize them. Make sense of the impossible. Spoiler alert, we were hilariously unprepared. What follows is a comprehensive report detailing our investigation into humanity, a species that makes quantum mechanics look straightforward and predictable. Buckle up, because this is going to be one hell of an administrative nightmare. And to understand the human conundrum, you first need to grasp the Galactic Sentient Species Classification Matrix. It's a system so meticulously designed that it's supposed to categorize every intelligent life form with mathematical precision. We have 147 distinct taxonomic markers, everything from technological development levels to threat potential, cultural complexity, and reproductive strategies. Most species fit neatly into these categories. The Kryn are pure logical processors. Their entire civilization functions like a living spreadsheet. Zorblaxians are mercantile nomads who've turned negotiation into an art form that makes quantum encryption look simple. The Silicon Collective of Proxima 9? They communicate exclusively through mathematically perfect harmonics. And then there are humans. Our initial galactic database entry for humans read like a statistical impossibility. Technological level, emerging. Threat potential, simultaneously negligible and catastrophic. Cultural adaptability, unpredictable to the point of quantum uncertainty. Take, for instance, the incident that first drew serious investigative attention. A human research team was studying deep-sea marine ecosystems when their submersible experienced critical failure. Standard protocol for most species would involve immediate surrender to environmental conditions. Humans, they MacGyvered their disabled submarine using nothing more than emergency repair tape, a multi-tool, and what our linguists could only describe as weaponized optimism. They not only survived but completed their research mission. Enter Investigator Mara Voss, a Quantan sociologist with a reputation for solving bureaucratic enigmas. She was 6 feet of lean muscle, cybernetic neural implants, and pure investigative determination. Her file was a marvel of academic achievement, 3 doctoral degrees, 17 published xenoanthropological studies, and a personal record of solving classification mysteries that had stumped the Bureau for generations. Humans are not a bug in our system, she would often say. They're a feature we haven't understood yet. Her mission parameters were deceptively simple. Spend 6 standard cycles embedded in human society. And observe. Document. Classify. What made humans truly bizarre wasn't just their technological inconsistencies. It was their capacity for simultaneous destruction and creation. A human could develop a groundbreaking medical treatment in the morning and construct an improvised explosive device from household chemicals by afternoon, not out of malice, but sometimes just to prove it was possible. Their military personnel were equally perplexing, soldiers who could transition from tactical combat to compassionate humanitarian work in the span of hours, individuals trained in advanced weaponry who would use those same skills to rescue endangered wildlife or rebuild community infrastructure. The more we investigated, the more humans defied every categorical assumption. They were walking, talking contradictions, peaceful yet capable of extraordinary violence, technologically limited yet cosmically ambitious, individually fragile yet collectively resilient. Investigator Voss's first report came with a note that would become legendary in our archives: recommendation: classify humans as unpredictable variable and invest in significantly more coffee. Little did we know how prophetic that recommendation would become. Investigator Voss's initial deployment to Earth was supposed to be a standard embedded observation mission. Standard, of course, being a relative term when dealing with humans. Her cover identity was brilliantly mundane, a mid-level marketing consultant named Mara Voss, complete with an artificially aged social media history and credentials so perfectly bureaucratic they would bore most sentient beings into a coma. The goal: blend in, observe, and not trigger any extraordinary responses. First observation: humans have an extraordinary talent for completely missing the extraordinary while obsessing over the most irrelevant details. During her first week, Voss witnessed what should have been a routine office environment. What actually unfolded was a microcosm of survival dynamics that would make evolutionary biologists weep. Take the office coffee machine, a seemingly innocuous piece of technology that appeared to be the actual power center of human organizational structure. When the machine broke down, the entire workplace ecosystem nearly collapsed. 3 employees immediately displayed complex problem-solving skills that rivaled military tactical planning. One individual, a software developer named Derek, managed to resurrect the machine using nothing more than a paperclip, electrical tape, and what appeared to be sheer force of will. "It's not about the coffee," Derek explained to a confused coworker. "It's about sending a message." The message, as far as Voss could determine, was that humans could weaponize basic maintenance into an art form of passive-aggressive workplace dominance. But the real revelation came during what humans casually referred to as a team-building exercise, an event that in any other species would be a structured professional development activity. For humans, it was more like controlled chaos with plausible deniability. The exercise involved navigating a series of physical and mental challenges. What should have been a simple cooperative task turned into a masterclass of improvisational strategy. When one team member struggled with a physical obstacle, the others didn't just help. They engineered solutions that combined engineering, psychology, and what could only be described as interpretive performance art. One particularly memorable moment involved a team member named Elena, a graphic designer who looked like she'd never lifted anything heavier than a design tablet. When a colleague struggled to complete a climbing wall challenge, she not only provided verbal coaching but physically demonstrated a technique that combined rock climbing principles with what appeared to be modern dance and quantum physics. "Watch the weight distribution," she called out. "It's all about momentum and believing you're lighter than you actually are." The other team members didn't just accept this advice. They integrated it into their own approach with a synchronicity that suggested some form of unspoken telepathic communication. Voss's initial report draft read like a fever dream of bureaucratic confusion. Subject species demonstrates alarming capacity for collective problem-solving that defies traditional hierarchical and cooperative models. Recommend immediate reclassification from emerging technological civilization to potentially sentient swarm intelligence with inexplicable humor. Subroutines. Her supervisor sent back a single note: clarify, use fewer words. Humans, it seemed, were not just a species. They were a universal anomaly waiting to be understood, if understanding was even possible. And we were just getting started. The critical moment came during what humans nonchalantly called a weekend camping trip, an activity that in any other species would be classified as an extreme survival scenario. Investigator Voss had embedded herself with a group of 6 humans, a mixed demographic that seemed chosen specifically to challenge any rational understanding of group dynamics. There was Derek, the software developer, Elena, the graphic designer, Marcus, the high school history teacher, Raj, the medical researcher, Lisa, the construction project manager, and Jack, a retired military veteran who worked as a local librarian. They were hiking through a mountain region when a series of events unfolded that would become the defining moment of our human classification investigation. First, a sudden mountain storm, the kind that would send most species running for immediate shelter. The humans. They transformed into a living, breathing survival algorithm. And Marcus, the history teacher, immediately began constructing a shelter using techniques he'd apparently learned from studying indigenous survival methods. His hands moved with a precision that suggested he'd done this 1,000 times, despite spending most of his professional life inside climate-controlled classrooms. Raj, the medical researcher, was already taking inventory of their emergency supplies, cross-referencing potential medical scenarios with the available resources. He'd turned a simple first aid kit into a mobile field hospital, using nothing more than zip ties, duct tape, and what appeared to be pure mathematical probability. Lisa, the construction manager, was redesigning their shelter in real time, using fallen branches and creating a structural support system that would make civil engineering textbooks weep with joy. Her spatial reasoning transformed random forest debris into a weather-resistant structure that looked like it could withstand a small apocalypse. Jack, the librarian-turned-veteran, was setting up a communication and navigation system using a combination of traditional compass, smartphone technology, and what could only be described as muscle memory from years of military training. Elena and Derek were managing the group's morale, a critical survival factor that most species would overlook. Elena was telling stories that kept the group's spirits high, while Derek was calculating food rationing and potential route alternatives with the intensity of a military strategist. When a mountain lion appeared, a predator that would send most species into immediate panic, the group's response was so coordinated it seemed choreographed. No one ran. No one froze. They moved. Marcus positioned himself to appear larger, using a technique he'd taught in his wilderness survival unit. Raj was already preparing a medical response in case of potential injury. Lisa was creating a physical barrier using their equipment. Jack was assessing the predator's behavior with the calm of someone who'd seen far worse. The mountain lion, faced with this united human front, did something unexpected. It backed away. Not because the humans were overtly threatening, but because they presented a unified, adaptive organism that defied traditional predator-prey dynamics. Voss's neural implants were working overtime, recording every millisecond of this interaction. Her preliminary analysis was breaking every known xenobiological classification model. "They're not a species," her internal monologue recorded. "They're a distributed problem-solving network with an inexplicable sense of humor." The mountain lion encounter lasted less than 2 minutes. To any other observer, it would have been a non-event. To us, it was a fundamental rewriting of interspecies interaction protocols. Humans weren't just survivors. They were living, breathing adaptation engines, and we were just beginning to understand the true nature of their potential. The report landed in the Galactic Classification Bureau like a bureaucratic neutron bomb. Investigator Voss's comprehensive analysis required 17 separate review committees, 23 interdepartmental meetings, and an emergency requisition of what our records indicate was an unprecedented amount of caffeine-equivalent stimulants. The core finding was simple, yet catastrophically complex. Humans were not just a species. They were a living, breathing, adaptability algorithm that defied every known classification model. Director Zan talk of the Sentient Species Evaluation Committee, a being who had processed more xenobiological data than most civilizations have total population members, that stared at the report for 72 continuous hours. His 6 visual receptors blinked in what could only be described as a combination of terror and profound respect. "They weaponize optimism," he muttered into his standard-issue bureaucratic communication device. "They turn inconvenience into innovation." They treat survival not as a biological imperative, but as a creative challenge. The implications were staggering. Humans could transform office supplies into potential survival tools, convert social interaction into complex problem-solving networks, treat unexpected challenges as opportunities for improvisation, and maintain psychological stability through what can only be described as weaponized humor. Our existing classification matrices simply collapsed. Humans weren't just breaking the rules, they were rewriting the entire concept of rules in real time. The preliminary reclassification proposal read like a fever dream of administrative poetry. Species classification, Homo sapiens, and threat level, quantum, survival potential, infinite undefined, technological progression, chaotic adaptive, diplomatic engagement, unpredictable positive. And most species would have been terrified by such a classification. Humans, they would probably find it amusing. The bureaucratic response was predictably complex. Some committees wanted immediate containment protocols. Others wanted to study humans as a potential galactic problem-solving resource. A small but vocal minority suggested we should just give them administrative positions and watch the universe reorganize itself. What truly terrified the classification boards was humans' complete lack of awareness about their own potential. They didn't see themselves as anything special. A species that could casually survive mountain lion encounters, resurrect coffee machines through sheer willpower, and transform team-building exercises into complex survival scenarios, and they thought this was normal. The most chilling part of Voss's report wasn't the capabilities. It was the casual, almost accidental nature of their extraordinary adaptability. Recommend immediate comprehensive study. The final line of her report read, but approach with caution. They might accidentally solve our problem while making a joke. Attached was a video of the mountain camping trip. In the background, while discussing their near-predator encounter, the humans were making s'mores and telling terrible puns. The universe, it seemed, had just discovered its most dangerous practical jokers. And we were definitely going to need more coffee. Sinbrido is Seaton Mao. In the end, our investigation didn't just classify humans. It fundamentally transformed our understanding of adaptive intelligence. The final report was submitted with a recommendation that can only be described as bureaucratic surrender. Investigator Voss's closing statement became legendary across the Galactic Classification Bureau. Humans are not a species to be understood. They are a universal force to be acknowledged. Our most advanced predictive models, algorithms so complex they could simulate entire civilization life cycles, failed spectacularly when applied to human behavior. They didn't just think outside the box. They looked at the box, redesigned it, built a better box, and then used the original box as emergency kindling. The truly fascinating detail. Humans remained completely unaware of their own extraordinary nature. While we debated their classification, they were busy solving problems, creating art, making terrible jokes, and occasionally saving endangered species, sometimes all before lunch. Director Zantok's final recommendation was both brilliant and terrifying in its simplicity. Observation continues. Containment impossible. Engagement recommended with maximum flexibility and minimum expectation. Our classification matrix now included a new category, unofficially dubbed the human uncertainty principle, a taxonomic marker that essentially meant expect the unexpected, and then revise your expectations. The most ironic part, humans would probably find our entire investigation hilarious. They'd likely turn it into a comedy podcast or a satirical documentary, completely missing the profound implications of our findings. As for Investigator Voss, she made her most shocking decision yet. Instead of returning to our galactic headquarters, she decided to remain on Earth. Her final transmission suggested she was considering a career change to marketing consultant. A choice that our bureaucratic systems interpreted as either the most brilliant infiltration strategy or complete professional surrender. We're still not sure which. What we know is this: humanity represents a unique evolutionary algorithm. A species that turns limitation into innovation, transforms challenge into opportunity, and views the impossible as merely a temporary inconvenience. Our final classification reads simply, humans, approach with enthusiasm, caution, and an open mind. And maybe keep some emergency coffee on hand, just in case.